Have you ever started rucking, felt stronger, but noticed your hips, back, or shoulders tightening up week after week, and wondered if that's just part of getting older? In this episode, we break down why stiffness and nagging pain aren't inevitable for ruckers, and how improving mobility and flexibility can dramatically change how your body feels under load. You'll learn how yoga, when taught correctly, can help ruckers move better, recover faster, and stay in the game longer without needing hour-long classes or complicated routines. You're listening to the Ruckers Edge podcast, a show all about rucking that is designed to help you improve your rucking routine, lose weight, and ultimately gain your strength and energy back. Each episode dives into the science, stories, and strategies behind rucking. You'll learn from top ruckers, coaches, health experts, and performance specialists who break down what it takes to train smarter, recover faster, and stay ready for the next challenge. So whether you're new to rucking or an experienced rucker that's already logged hundreds of miles, this is the show for you. I'm your host, Spencer. Thanks again for listening in. My guest today is Dean Pullman, certified yoga instructor and CEO and founder of ManFlow Yoga. He explains exactly how ruckers can use simple, practical mobility work to protect their spine, hips, knees, and shoulders, even if you've never done yoga before and don't think it's for you. Here's my conversation with Dean Pullman, certified yoga instructor and CEO and founder of ManFlow Yoga. Dean Pullman, thanks so much for joining the podcast today. I'm excited to get into how yoga can benefit ruckers and keep them limber between rucks. So how are you doing today?
I am doing well. I don't know if you want to give away dates, but as of now, we're 2 weeks into winter break, so it's lots of dadding. So I'm just making it,
Yeah, I hear you. I just recently put together an episode on doing a reflective ruck and thinking about your previous year and getting ready for this next year. And I have yet to actually go on one. We're here into the new year and I haven't even done that yet. So
that's a theme. I felt like as a health and wellness professional influencer / community leader, yoga expert, whatever I am, that I needed to have like all of my 2026 plans laid out before it started. And the reality is I'm just not at all there yet. So my plan is, and if maybe this resonates with you and your listeners, but my plan is just to use like as much of January and as much of February as I need to kind of create some clarity and create some orientation around what does 2026 mean, or what do I want it to mean for me. So anyways, that's my plan.
No, yeah. I mean, you're a real person and you want to set good intentions. And I think it deserves some respect in terms of a timeline. You can't do too much, especially when the holidays come up. It's like you want to make sure you do the job right and you want to use it to improve your life or help your life. So, yeah, I mean, that's just part of it. Plus, you're a dad and you have priorities that shift daily. So, yeah, you got to make time for what you can. But I kind of want to start out just asking you, if you don't mind, giving us a quick version of your background and how you ended up working in mobility and yoga. And I should take a step back. Dean, you're the CEO and founder of ManFlow Yoga, which is a fitness program for men trying to regain their flexibility and rejuvenate their fitness. But yeah, how did you get into that? Give us a bit of your background.
Yeah, so I'm an athlete turned yoga instructor, and I don't say yogi because I don't really think of myself as, like a yogi with the whole yoga lifestyle. My background is as a lifelong athlete, collegiate lacrosse player, went into a yoga studio completely on accident, was looking for the tailor, stumbled into a yoga studio, did that first workout, was shocked at how challenging it was, and that inspired me to just keep up with yoga. 1 month in, I noticed my flexibility was dramatically different for the better. My body felt stronger, but also kind of lighter at the same time. I had more body awareness. My breathing was so much better. I had better balance. My lifting was better. So I was like, wow, this is really cool. And I tried to get some of my friends to go with me, and they're like, yoga? No. And, granted, this was 2011, so I think that our society's general beliefs about yoga have shifted as well. You go into a city, you're going to notice a lot more guys in their 20s and 30s doing yoga, going to yoga classes. But back then, and even now, especially with guys who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and even in their 40s too, they don't get excited about yoga because of all the connotations and associations that go with it. It's too feminine, it's too spiritual, it's not a good enough workout. And so that was kind of my experience. And I was like, well, that was kind of their experience when I asked them to come. And I was like, well, you know what, I'll do it with you guys, right? So I led them through a few workouts. I was a lacrosse captain and I was the kind of the conditioning coach at the same time. And so I led them through some yoga. I led them through yoga a couple times a week, and they're like, oh, wow, this is really cool. And then I started recording on YouTube. And so I don't know, got 12 years later, now we've got this community of tens of thousands of guys. I've reached probably over 1 million people at this point through books and DVDs, my YouTube channel, all my social media. And it's very much a fitness-focused approach for men, for guys who want to feel stronger, who want to feel younger, who want to feel more flexible, who are open to maybe some of the breathing and mindfulness aspects of it, but don't want to do it in this super, yogi, quasi-spiritual, new age type of approach. This is very much an approach to yoga that's focused on a functional approach, and that includes breathing, that includes body awareness. There's nothing woo-woo about. I say the word woo, and a lot of people get offended, especially if they are into yoga, but I say woo-woo in the sense of just concepts that don't seem approachable to day-to-day life. And so, but when you're focusing on your body awareness, when you're focusing on your breathing, that comes with a whole bunch of other aspects. That helps with your physical fitness, helps with being more aware of your body, knowing which muscles you should be engaging as you're moving, as you're going through exercise. But it also helps it carries over into other aspects of your life. You notice that, oh, I do have the ability to be patient in a stressful situation, or I do have the ability to notice when I'm stressed and start to check in with my breathing, or I can notice my shoulders really tense right now. And why are my shoulders tense? Maybe I can relax that. Mm-hmm. So there are tons of physical benefits. And if you're a lifter, you're going to notice that lifting gets easier, that it doesn't hurt as much, that you have more awareness of your body. You're using the right muscles instead of relying on one muscle group and not using your glutes or not using your abs. As that applies to rucking, that means that you're going to be using your core more. You're not going to be relying on your back. Your knees aren't going to hurt as much because you're using your hips and your ankles properly. You're going to have better posture just because you practice being in better posture. So your shoulders won't hurt as much. Your neck won't hurt as much. So there are tons of, physical benefits that go with it. It's kind of just, well, how is it taught? And is it done in a way that resonates with me? And if my approach doesn't resonate with you and you want to go traditional yoga, cool. That's great. But for a lot of guys who are more interested in I just want my body to feel good and I want to have a high level of physical fitness. And we're talking relative here, right? I'm not I'm not trying to reach the professional basketball players of the world. I'm mostly working with guys who are in their 50s, who are in their 60s, who are coming back into fitness after, 15 years off because they had kids. They had a job that they had to, had professional lives. They didn't have time to do the workouts and the self-care that they wanted to do. So they're coming back into things now and they're realizing that, oh, you know what? My body doesn't feel the way that it used to. Maybe I need to do something differently. And they do some research, they figure out, oh, you know what, I should work on my flexibility, or I should work on my core strength, or I need to do something that's going to undo this bad posture that I have. And that's kind of where I come in, I think.
But a ton of information there, and I appreciate that. And I think there are some similarities between the folks looking at your programs and some of the people getting into rucking. It's maybe they've been sidelined for X amount of time. They want to do something about their fitness. And it's like, where do I start? And so I know some people start picking up the rucksack and rucking, and then that's sort of like a gateway into other workouts. And I guess similarly with you, that they might start doing a workout and realize how stiff they are and how maybe they're not nearly as limber as they were like a decade or so ago. And so they turn to you for solutions. Full disclosure here, Dean, I don't do yoga regularly. I did yoga several years back with my then girlfriend, my now wife. We did some hot yoga sessions. She loves yoga. We've started to get my daughter into yoga. We do these kid yoga channels on YouTube, and I'll sit there and we'll do like a Disney themed yoga session with her, and it's not easy. Like the routines that they're doing, I mean, the kids are incredibly limber, and she's doing it no problem. Here I am, like sweating, trying to reach like my ankle. I'm like, it's hard. And I remember the first time I did yoga back in, I think it also was like 2009, 2010. It was, I was surprised, like looking around the room, seeing people that have been going to that class routinely just have no problem. And here I am, like as green as can be, a new timer and just struggling. So that was one thing I was surprised about. It's not an easy thing to do. And with all things, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. But it's something you have to work at.
I think people go into it thinking, oh, I'm not flexible, so I don't do yoga. And, flexibility is something that you do work on in yoga, but at the same time, like flexibility is something that is beneficial to everybody. And just because you aren't as flexible as someone else in the class doesn't mean that you aren't also benefiting from it. So I think what's really cool about working on your flexibility is it doesn't take that long to notice the results of flexibility work, in the sense of your body feels better, you have less back pain, your knees feel better, you're recovering better because you're more flexible. You're using your body more efficiently, in the sense of you're using it the way that it evolved to be used, rather than relying on certain muscle groups and not using other muscle groups. Like a lot of guys only use their quads when they're doing lower body stuff. And if you don't have flexibility, you're not going to be using all the other muscles in your hips. You're not going to be using the muscles in your ankles properly. You're not going to be using your abs properly. And so, flexibility is not just something that it's not just a goal, it's also working on it leads to a bunch of fitness benefits. And a lot of guys who are in yoga classes, like you had the experience, right? You're supposed to reach down and touch your feet. I'm like, well, that's like loading up a bar with 225, with like 245s on each side when you're brand new. It's not appropriate. And so it also does create this sense of like, oh, well, yoga's not for me, or, oh, it's too hard, or I'm discouraged because I couldn't do a basic pose. And it's just because most yoga isn't made for guys who are not flexible, right? It's made for women who are already flexible. Again, just kind of goes to, you got to find something that is actually going to meet you where you are with your flexibility level now and help you feel encouraged about the work that you're doing, and also is realistic for like where you are now.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, what's the long-term cost for athletes or ruckers who ignore mobility at an early stage? Like, let's just say a 40-year-old completely ignoring mobility and stability.
Longevity. I mean, longevity is the easiest way to answer that question, but also, preventable injuries, things that could sideline you for months, that could require surgery. And there are things that are preventable. I think there's also a mindset that people in their 40s, 50s tend to adopt when they realize that the workouts that they used to do aren't working the same way anymore. And they say, oh, you know what, this is just part of getting older and I can't do these exercises anymore. And so the question becomes like, hey, how do I modify this? Or like, how do I avoid doing this? And my interjection is, well, how about you just work on the weakness that's causing that issue? How about you work on having just a basic level of range of motion? Like, how about you work on your hip flexibility, work on your shoulder flexibility? Let's move your spine. Because the reality for most of us is that we are sitting down or inactive for 12 hours a day. So you have to do something to work on undoing that poor posture. You've got to do something that is going to open your hips, that's going to get you to twist from side to side, that's going to make you do a back bend or get your arms overhead or behind you and do all these things that your body is meant to do but isn't doing. But to go to your question, like, if you're not doing some sort of, and I don't care if it's yoga, like there's tons of different mobility programs, so I think the one reason why people like yoga as a mobility flexibility program is because it's in the format of flow. It's not like, a lot of people don't like doing a workout when it's like, do 10 of these, then do 10 of these. And if you're just going down a list, because it's just not fun, it takes more willpower in some ways, and it might just not be fun. So, I think one reason people might like yoga versus that is because they, when you think of flexibility, you do think of yoga. So like, okay, yoga, I'm going to work on flexibility. But also because if you can just press play and follow along, it's a lot less mentally demanding than following a list of exercises. So point being is, if you're not doing any sort of mobility work, period, then you are going to eventually run into some sort of injuries, or you're going to deal with preventable pain in a way that, yeah, you can make it through it. Maybe you can push through it. Maybe you have to take some days off, but like, that's pain that you don't need to have, that you could solve at the source with just, a few minutes of the appropriate movements on a daily basis. Or if you want to split it up and do like 3 times per week or even 2 times per week. These are, point being, like, these are all those aches and pains that prevent you from doing what you want to do as you get older. Those are preventable to a certain extent, right? With the appropriate exercise and, a well-structured yoga program like what I do with Manful Yoga is going to help with addressing the majority of those weaknesses that do lead to pain.
More with Dean in just a moment, including a simple pre-ruck and post-ruck mobility routine you can do in just a few minutes. But I want to take a quick break to say thanks for listening to the podcast. Please text this episode with a fellow rucker that might find it interesting or a friend that could benefit from rucking. Sharing this episode would help the show grow and help more people improve their health and lives. Okay, back to it. I did want to ask you about how you practice yoga. I always see these yoga classes being offered, and they're always guided. It's almost like a routine. Is it possible to use certain yoga stretches just independently, or is it more beneficial to go through a routine where you're kind of building on different movements or stretches?
I think the sequence is important in the sense of, like, there are poses that are more demanding than other poses, in the same way that like let's look at a squat, for example, right? Most people don't go straight into a squat. You're going to do some sort of warm up for that. Or you look at like a strict press, right? A shoulder press, holding a barbell and pushing it overhead, or even dumbbells and pushing overhead. And you probably wouldn't go straight into that without some warm up, especially if you're going to do heavy. Right. And it's kind of the same way with yoga, in the sense that, and you don't have to even call it yoga, because a lot of it is just isometric body exercises. They're just different variations of lunges or squats or planks or, core exercises or back bends or twists. So a lot of these are quote unquote yoga poses, but a lot of them are also just borrowed from other body weight exercises. The idea of what you're doing at a yoga studio being the same thing that, an ancient yogi in the subcontinent of India was doing 2,500 years ago it's not true. Like, most of the poses that they were doing, are not found in modern yoga. Most of the poses found in yoga are borrowed from other types of exercise, notably British gymnastics. Like, a lot of what we think of yoga now actually came over from 19th century British gymnastics, because Britain colonized India. And so they looked at what the British soldiers were doing for their calisthenics, and they integrated it into yoga. So point of this being, a lot of these bodyweight exercises, it makes sense to start with sooner in the routine, right? So you want to do something that doesn't take a ton of flexibility right at the beginning. It makes sense to go through a progression of exercises, which you can somewhat learn on your own. Like, that's actually, I think, one of the coolest things that I hear about from people in our community is they do Manful Yoga for a couple of years, 3 years, and then they're like, you know what, Dean, I think I got it from here. And I'm like, great, good job,
cool.
Man. That means... That means I'm a pretty good teacher, I guess.
Yeah,
like, if you were able to figure everything out, from that. So it is helpful to go through a progression of exercises to make sure that you're warming up the proper muscles before you're going, too deep into the movements. But it also doesn't have to take 60 minutes. Like, most of my routines are in the 20 to 25 minute range. I've got a ton on YouTube that are 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So yes, there should be... sequencing is somewhat science, somewhat of an art, but you don't have to, it doesn't have to be this 60-minute long process, if that's kind of the answer you're looking for.
Yeah, it does. And you just mentioned warm up, and I'm curious, using your expertise, can you enlighten us, maybe give us a few pointers, pre and post ruck, what sort of poses or routines we should be doing? Like, if someone can only pick up maybe 3 moves before going on a ruck, what would you guide them, or what would you say to them?
So since you have that weight on your back and you're going to be kind of, leaning forward, what I would do is what's called a bridge position, which, yes, it is a yoga pose, but you'll find this in tons of non-yoga exercises, workouts as well. So I'd start with a bridge position, because that's going to get you in a bit of an open position with your chest. It's going to get your back into extension, meaning arching your back versus rounding your back, which is what, you'll be rounding your back when you're rucking a little bit. Also get your glutes firing, which is going to help with your knees. I'd also do some sort of upper back kind of thoracic opening. So a standing side bend is a really good warm up, which basically if you can visualize standing up, reaching up as tall as you can with your arms, and then leaning over to one side while maintaining height. That would be a really good one. That's going to help open your rib cage. That's going to help with your thoracic mobility. And then inserting some sort of twist as well. So I like a side angle pose is a really good one for this. So getting some mobility to the upper back. Side angle is a little harder to explain, but you can visualize going into a lunge position with your hips facing out to the side, and then reaching one arm up and one arm down and kind of twisting to open up your chest to the sky or ceiling. Those are three that would be really good, just kind of off the top of my head.
Awesome. What about post-ruck? Same thing, or would you recommend a few different poses?
So post-ruck, you want to focus on recovery in the areas that you've worked the most. So I would say probably a child's pose would be a good way to wind down from a ruck. That's going to be a good shoulder stretch. That's going to allow your back to release at the same time. I'd also recommend probably a pigeon pose. A pigeon is just a really deep hip stretch for your glutes and your external hip rotators. So any sort of lower body workout, doing that afterwards would be a good idea. And then if you have a little bit of, I'd also go into that cool down with a down dog. And since most people aren't, yoga experts yet, what I would do is I would find a staircase where you can put your hands on maybe the second step of that staircase. So you don't have to be as flexible versus if you did it like with your hands and your feet on the same level, you might have kind of crappy technique. But if you put your hands maybe a foot up, right? So if you're using that staircase or a landing or something like that where your hands are higher than your feet, that's going to help you with modifying for your lack of flexibility / yoga experience.
That's a great tip. I appreciate that. Yeah, we have a yoga block, but with my inability to do some of these poses, I've had to stack a few on top of each other to achieve what I needed to.
We're in the process of renaming it, but we call it the big ass block.
Nice.
It's 60% taller than a standard yoga block. So for those guys,
entry level, need it so you don't hurt yourself or you don't do it incorrectly. Speaking of, I want to go into maybe a routine between rucks, but I wanted to touch base on this since we're talking about form. What are some of the more common mistakes people make when trying a new yoga pose, or what do we need to look out for?
So I'm going to go through concepts instead. The first thing is mirroring, right? So most people approach yoga with the sense that I'm going to mirror what other people are doing. And some of this comes down to just poor instruction, right? Most yoga classes don't actually focus on technique, and they say, everybody do a downward dog and breathe in and breathe out. And imagine your body is a tree and, whatever it is, but there's not enough focus on actual technique. And so the first thing you want to do is avoid mirroring the instructor. You want to make sure that you're doing the poses or the postures, the stretches, exercises as it applies to your body. So you're not just trying, if you see the instructor reaching down and touching her toes or his toes, you don't want to go straight to touching your toes. You want to think, well, what's the goal of this pose? Well, it's a hamstring stretch. Okay, so I'm going to focus on stretching my hamstrings instead of just getting my hands to touch the ground. So avoiding mirroring and focusing on what is the goal of the pose? What are the target muscles? What am I supposed to be? How does this apply to my flexibility level? The second thing would be using props appropriately. So props bring the ground up to you, or they help with shoulder flexibility if you're holding a strap. So holding a strap instead of bringing your hands together. They're going to help you just modify the pose so that instead of you, again, doing a 225-pound back squat when you're just starting lifting, now you're doing just the bar instead, right? And that's what props do. They make it so that you can modify the exercise to fit your flexibility level.
Cool.
And then broadly speaking, most guys should be bending their knees more in hip stretches. When you bend your knees, that means that you're not putting as much strain on your back. So if you're trying to reach down and touch your toes and you lock out your legs to try and get your hands to your feet, your hamstrings are tight. There's flexibility that's limited there. And so you're going to make up for that lack of flexibility by trying to use your lower back to compensate. And that's a really easy way to overstretch and injure your back. There's actually a lot of injuries that happen in yoga because people are just trying to force themselves into positions they're not ready for. So bending your knees and using blocks is going to help with hip stretches.
Excellent. And sort of along the same lines as form, can you talk about breathing for a second? Because I know breathing can be pretty critical to achieving these poses, if I remember correctly. How does breathing fit into a yoga routine and achieving these poses?
So breathing helps you regulate your nervous system, and it complements whatever you're doing with your body. So if you're working on getting deeper into a posture and you are holding your breath, your body is going to resist. Your muscles are not going to open up. So if you can start a pose in a way where it doesn't feel that intense, if you can aim for like the 3-4 out of 10 intensity range to start, and then you can use your breath to ease deeper into the pose, that's going to help you stretch more. That's going to help you increase flexibility more versus if you go straight to, I'm going to go as far as I can. I'm going to go to this 8 out of 10 intensity to start right away. And I'm just going to hope I can breathe. So you do really want to be able to maintain awareness of your breathing as you're doing it. And if you're new to yoga, it is really overwhelming because you're like, where does my knee go? Where does my hand go? Where's my shoulder go? I'm supposed to be breathing too. Right. So you have to be just go into it knowing that you're not going to remember to be present with every single breath that you do. You're not going to be like locked in awareness wise to every breath that you do. But every time that you recognize, I'm supposed to be focusing on my breathing, that's actually a win. So that's a big piece of advice that I give to people who are starting out is, yes, breathing is very important, but it's going to take a lot of time and consistency to build awareness of your breathing. So you can, every time you forget that you're breathing is actually a win because you're remembering that you're not breathing and therefore building awareness of it.
Yeah, I like that. I appreciate you explaining that. Starting out, I definitely fell into that role of trying to achieve the max amount of the stress immediately going into that pose. And that's just not how that works. But so let's say a rucker wants to develop some sort of routine between rucks. How do I want to phrase this? How often or how long should that routine or that session be? Or should they do multiple sessions between rucks? Let's just say, maybe they go on a long ruck on the weekends, a Saturday or Sunday, and they want to maintain some stability and some limberness, I guess, between those rucks. They want to maybe start doing a yoga routine. Should they do it multiple days that week? Or how long should the average session be, I guess?
I mean, it depends on what you have time for. Like, it'd be great if everyone had time for a 60-minute, active recovery yoga session on Sundays, but most people, myself included, don't always have time for that. So, I think recognizing that even 5 minutes is beneficial is important. So, and there's also different approaches that you can use for your yoga routines. Like you mentioned wanting to do like a stability / maybe a little bit of active recovery routine. And that's something that's great to do either, maybe 6 to 8 plus hours after your rucking session. So if you do like a Saturday morning ruck and it's Saturday evening now, and you're like me and your Saturday evenings don't involve going to the bar or, a club, then you can do some stretching while you're in front of the TV. Or if it's Sunday and it's the day afterward, then that's a great time to, do this combination of yoga, stability, light strength work, plus flexibility and recovery work. But then you can also use it, I think it's great to do it as a warm-up before other workouts. So you could definitely do it as a warm-up before rucking to kind of prime your muscles like we talked about. And then it also is great as a cool down, either immediately after the rucking session or, like I said at the beginning of this answer, it's 6 to 8 plus hours afterward as a way to kind of get out in front of the soreness. So, and then you can also do it as a standalone workout. So if you want to do a more intense yoga session where you're focusing on building hip strength, building hip stability and ankle strength so that you can support your knees better and your back doesn't hurt as much, then that's a great thing to do kind of on your non-rucking days if you have a little bit more gas in the tank,
so
to speak.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And with that routine, let's just say everyone's crazy busy, managing schedule for yourself, your spouse, your kids. What's the number one, like, biggest bang for your buck mobility drill that you would recommend to ruckers if they only had, just a few minutes a day to maybe achieve some poses or some sort of routine?
I hate that question.
I know, right?
Yeah, because it's
as I was
like,
asking, it's like it's so dependent on each
yeah,
person.
it's dependent on each person. And also, like, I get a lot of people who are like, I'm just doing the same workout over and over again until I master it. I'm like, okay, there's a lot of
Yeah.
other exercises you could and should be doing. I think the important thing is just doing, I think the important thing is doing a sort of establishing some sort of cadence or a rhythm with it and doing, again, 5 minutes is helpful, 10 minutes. The good thing about yoga is most of it is full body. So, I mean, poses specifically for ruckers, and just for our modern kind of world, I do a lot of hip opening stretches, like with strength. So, something called a goddess or a horse pose is really good for your hip mobility, your groin. Something called like a high lunge or a crescent lunge is just a really good thing to do for opening your hip flexors, strengthening your core, opening up your chest. A standing back bend would be something that's really important, really good to do. If you're rucking in particular, just getting your chest open, getting an arch to your spine instead of rounding forward.
Okay, gotcha. Now let's talk about Manflow Yoga. Who does Manflow Yoga usually serve? What's your usual clientele like?
Our guys are men who are interested in longevity, who are interested in pain relief, who want to be able to do the exercises that they're doing now or would like to do for as long as possible without pain. So they want to enjoy the things that they're physically doing. They want to be able to be capable of doing those things, and they want to do it for as long as possible. So, most of our guys, I'd say the sweet spot is guys in their 50s and early 60s. We've got guys in their 40s and 70s as well, in addition to, guys who are in their 30s and 80s. Mostly it is in like that 40s to, I would say late 40s to 60s range for the most part. It's not just guys who lift weights or guys who run. It's also guys who are office workers who, they have bad posture. They want to get back into fitness and they don't know where to start. They know that they can't go straight to a boot camp class or like a weightlifting program. They want to ease back into it. I've also had guys who have signed up because they're looking for sexual wellness. Like these are guys who need medication to perform. And so they're looking at this as a way to build that fitness. These are also guys who have chronic aches and pains, chronic back pain, chronic knee pain, chronic shoulder pain, poor posture from years of sitting at a desk, and who are looking for fitness that will specifically work on these issues. And then we've also got a lot of guys, like I mentioned, kind of in that athletes and runners category who have been lifelong, usually recreational athletes. I've got some pretty interesting professional athletes who have joined as well, but most of the guys are recreational athletes. And these are guys who just want to be able to keep doing what they're doing now, but they notice like, hey, my knees hurt way more than they used to, or my back's starting to hurt, and that never used to happen. And so these are guys who understand, oh, I do need to work on my flexibility, mobility. Okay, so this program, this Manflow Yoga thing will help with that. But for the most part, within a month or 2 months, guys notice the improvements. They notice that their bodies don't have as much pain. They notice that they can do their other workouts with less pain. They notice less pain day to day. They start to increase flexibility and they're more aware of their bodies. So yeah, that's who we work with. That's what we do.
And the program, is it 100% online?
It's all online. We have some community events that we do. So that's something that I started doing within the last couple of years, putting more effort into doing weekend events in cities with high member populations.
Cool.
So like Chicago, this upcoming year, we went to Chicago, we did Washington, D.C., we'll be doing Boston, Seattle, Denver, and Atlanta next year.
That's a lot. That's a lot in person.
Yeah.
That's great, Dean.
Yeah. So, but mostly online. And we also have a cool community, which makes it more fun, more enjoyable, and also, adds an element to it that ultimately makes it easier and helps with you doing it more. Because if you're just doing it by
Sure.
yourself, there are some people who like that and they don't need any sort of extra motivation or push. But for a lot of people, they want more of a community sense. They want some sense of like, oh, I'm not the only person doing this. And so the community aspect really does help with that. And then it also, people get to, meet each other at these in-person events that we do from time to time, people that they know from the community and the members area community section. And also we have a Facebook group where a lot of that interaction happens.
Okay, good deal. Yeah, lastly, if any of the listeners would like to learn more about it, where should they go to check it out?
We've got a free 7-day challenge. It's a beginner's yoga for men challenge, which is a really good way for you to see what this looks like and try it out. There's no credit card required. This is just solely delivered via email. So those are 15-minute workouts. They're made with beginners in mind and to help you understand and kind of notice for yourself firsthand the benefits of what doing yoga on a regular basis can be. And it is a 7-day challenge, so it's 7 days in a row, but most of our guys are doing these probably about 3 times per week. So don't feel obligated to do, or overwhelmed by daily, things. So even 2 or 3 times a week will help with noticeable results. And that's at a link for that. We'll put in the show notes for sure. But manfulyoga.com/7DC.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to go check it out right now. I'm curious. Instead of doing Elsa yoga for the 13th time in a row, I'm going to mix it up and do this. So.
I'm sure this will resonate with your daughter. Yeah,
Well, Dean, thanks so much for coming on, man. I think you've provided a lot of value to us Ruckers, but I've enjoyed our conversation, and I just want to say thanks again for joining us today, and good luck to you with Manful Yoga.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you having me. This was a good conversation, and best of luck to everything, and let me know if there's anything else I can do for your community.
All right, that wraps up my conversation with Dean Pullman from Manflow Yoga. To learn more about his program, head on over to manflowyoga.com or check out the 7-day challenge he mentioned at manflowyoga.com/7DC. That's the number 7, Delta, Charlie. If you want to reach out to me, head on over to theruckersedge.com or on Instagram at theruckersedgepod. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow or subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app so you're notified of new episodes. And in next week's episode, we sit down with Dan Vinson from Wild Gym. We talk about rucking in the snow and the packs that Wild Gym offers. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks again for listening to this episode of The Ruckers Edge.